I never thought I'd be writing something like this, but I feel like I'm living in a story I don't recognize anymore. I'm 34F, married to Elliot 36M, for 7 years. When we first met, what drew me to him wasn't fireworks or wild passion. It was steadiness. He was the guy who always showed up on time, paid attention when I spoke, and made me feel like life could finally be calm after a messy dating history. He was a tax consultant, dependable to the bone, the kind of man who read receipts twice and folded laundry with military precision. I thought I'd hit the jackpot. Someone who wouldn't gamble with my heart. For years, our life was a comfortable rhythm. Morning coffee together, inside jokes about clients from his office, shared dinners where we argued over which Netflix show to start. Sure, it wasn't always thrilling, but it was solid. I honestly believed we were on the same team. Then, a few months ago, I started noticing tiny ripples in that calm surface. He began working late, not just occasionally but several nights a week. First, he said he'd taken on extra clients. I was proud of him for hustling, until the excuses got sloppier. He'd mention a meeting that didn't line up with his calendar. Once he texted me that he was stuck at the office, but I called his office phone to check on him and it rang out. He later claimed he was in the break room without reception. He also started smelling faintly of wine when he came home, which made no sense. Elliot always said wine gave him headaches. He began buying expensive cologne, started going to the gym out of nowhere, and traded his cozy sweaters for crisp shirts he'd iron at night while scrolling through his phone with a secretive smile. It wasn't just the changes, it was how defensive he became if I asked about them. If I teased, "Who are you getting dressed up for?" he'd snap, "Don't be ridiculous, Rachel." His phone, once casually left on the counter, was now glued to him like an extra limb. Even in the bathroom, he kept it face down on the edge of the sink. I told myself he was stressed, maybe going through a phase. People do that, right? But deep down, a quiet panic started growing. There were moments when I'd catch him staring at nothing with a half smile, and I'd wonder if I was sharing a house with a man whose heart was already somewhere else. That was the first time I admitted, even just in my head, that something wasn't right. The moment everything tipped from suspicion to certainty was a Thursday night I'll never forget. Elliot said he was meeting a client at a wine bar downtown. That alone felt odd. Elliot hates wine. He's the guy who always orders sparkling water at office happy hours. I tried to distract myself at home, but the unease was like static in my head. Around 9 p.m., I decided to clean the laundry room. That's when I noticed his favorite jacket draped over the back of a chair, the one he always wore to meetings. I slipped my hands into the pockets to check if they needed washing and found a crumpled receipt from a place called the Velvet Cork. It was for 2 glasses of Merlot and a cheese plate, time-stamped only an hour earlier. Something in me snapped. I grabbed my keys, drove across town, and parked near the bar. Through the big windows, I saw him instantly, Elliot, leaning in close to a woman in a crimson dress. Her hair caught the glow of the pendant lights, and she laughed like she'd known him forever. His hand brushed hers across the table. I froze, my heart hammering so hard I thought people could hear it outside. I watched him touch her wrist, slide her phone toward him like they were sharing a secret. They looked comfortable, practiced. Not a casual work meeting, something deeper. I couldn't bring myself to storm in, not yet. I sat in the car, gripping the steering wheel until my fingers hurt, tears blurring the scene inside. When I got home, I decided to confirm what my eyes had already told me. I went through his desk drawer, something I'd never done before. There, under a pile of old tax forms, was a second phone, slim, unfamiliar, with a black case. My stomach dropped. It only took one swipe to see the truth. Messages from someone named Lila Redheart. Sweet, flirty texts about art galleries, late-night client dinners, and photos of wine bottles with captions like, "Wish you were here." My hand shook so badly I almost dropped the phone. The man I thought I knew, steady, loyal Elliot, had a whole other life hidden in plain sight. And I had no idea how far it went, or how long it had been going on. By the next morning I barely slept. My hands trembled as I made coffee, staring at the second phone sitting in a drawer like a live grenade. I kept replaying the sight of him with that woman, Lila, laughing, leaning in like I didn't exist. When Elliot came into the kitchen, cheerful as if nothing had happened, I couldn't hold it in any longer. "Who's Lila?" I asked, my voice way steadier than I felt. He froze for a fraction of a second, then forced a laugh. What are you talking about? I told him everything, the bar, the receipt, the phone. His face drained, then twisted into something between annoyance and panic. You're spying on me? That's crazy, Ratch. He snapped, trying to snatch the phone from my hand. She's a client. I was just helping her with tax issues. She's going through a divorce. She needed someone to talk to. His explanations tumbled out, each more far-fetched than the last. Asterisk, he only had a second phone because his work contacts needed privacy. Asterisk, the wine bar meeting was about helping her sell art from the divorce. Asterisk, the heart emoji in her name? A typo from when I imported contacts. When I mentioned the text where he told her, "Can't stop thinking about you, tonight was magic," his face flushed a deep guilty red. It's not what it looks like, he said, pacing the kitchen. You're blowing this out of proportion. She's been struggling, I was just being there for her. I couldn't believe how easily he lied, how quickly he flipped the script to make me feel unreasonable. At one point he even tried to make me doubt my own memory. You knew I had a work dinner that night, he said, shaking his head. I told you. You're just twisting things. But every excuse rang hollow. The longer I stood there, the clearer it became. He wasn't just hiding an affair, he built a whole web of stories to keep me in the dark. When I pressed him harder, demanding honesty, his mask finally slipped. He sighed, rubbed his forehead and muttered, Fine. We got close. It wasn't supposed to mean anything. I just needed a break from all of this. He gestured vaguely at our kitchen, our life. That was the moment I felt something inside me shift. The man who once promised to protect my heart wasn't just cheating. He was rewriting our history to justify it. After Elliot's half-confession, I felt like someone had knocked the air out of my lungs. I sat at the kitchen table for what felt like hours after he stormed off to take a drive, staring at the empty mug in front of me. The house was so quiet that I could hear the tick of the wall clock, every second dragging the weight of what I just learned. That night I barely slept. I lay awake replaying every moment of the past year, the networking events, the late nights at the office, the new shirts I'd ironed because he claimed clients expected him to look polished. Even our vacations took on a different hue. The business call he'd taken during our beach walk, the way he'd spent half of dinner texting a colleague. All of it was tangled up with Lila now. I started noticing other small wounds I hadn't let myself name before. He'd become impatient with me in subtle ways, rolling his eyes if I asked about his day, sighing when I forgot to refill the printer paper. He'd stop saying goodnight unless I reminded him. Those things had felt like normal ruts of marriage. Now they looked like breadcrumbs leading away from us. Grief came in waves, but under it simmered fury. How dare he risk our life together for a fling wrapped in wine and gallery lighting? I couldn't stop picturing them laughing at some private joke while I was home folding laundry, believing in us. I'd cry until I was hoarse, then find myself pacing the hall like I could outrun the betrayal. I tried leaning on people, but even that felt complicated. My mom wanted to believe he'd come to his senses. My best friend Aaron sent me a playlist titled Get Angry and Heal, insisting, "This isn't on you." Sometimes I felt strong, determined to reclaim myself. Other times I felt like a ghost walking through my own life. Elliot, meanwhile, alternated between thin apologies and awkward normalcy. He'd leave sticky notes about groceries or ask what I wanted for dinner, as if a casserole could erase his double life. When I pressed him for clarity, he'd mutter that I was dragging things out. It was clear he wanted forgiveness without work, peace without accountability. The breaking point came when I caught him texting her again. Nothing overt, just a photo of some sculpture with "Thought you'd like this." My hand shook so badly I almost dropped the phone. He looked startled that I still cared enough to check, like the damage should already be swept under the rug. That night, for the first time, I truly considered a future without him. A week later, after another tense dinner where Elliot kept trying to steer the conversation toward mundane things, taxes, new coffee beans, whether we should repaint the hallway, I finally stopped him mid-sentence. "We can't keep pretending," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "I need to know if you're actually committed to fixing this, or if you're just buying time until she texts again." He rubbed his temples, muttered that he didn't want drama. When I asked him point-blank if the affair was over, He hesitated just long enough to give me the answer without words. That pause made something inside me settle. I realized I'd been holding on to the version of him who once looked at me like I was the only person in the room, but that man had left months ago. The one in front of me was a stranger willing to risk everything for the rush of being someone else's secret. So I made a plan. I spoke with a lawyer friend about what separation would involve. I moved some savings into an account under my name. I even started visiting apartments just to see what freedom might look like. Each step felt terrifying and liberating all at once. When I finally told Elliot I wanted a separation, he scoffed like I was being melodramatic. Then he pivoted to pleading, not because he loved me, I realized, but because he hated losing the comfort of a wife who kept the bills paid and the house running while he played artist's muse on the side. I stood firm. I told him I deserved someone who didn't need two phones to manage his life, someone who wouldn't trade honesty for cheap excitement. He called me cold, accused me of throwing away years together, but I knew the truth. He had already thrown it away the night he decided to rewrite our vows in whispers to another woman. In the weeks since, I've felt more myself than I have in a long time. I've joined a hiking group, reconnected with old friends, even signed up for a pottery class just because I've always wanted to. Some mornings the grief still ambushes me, but there's also a quiet strength that wasn't there before. If anyone reading this is sitting in that same fog, I was wondering if you're overreacting. Hear me. Trust what your gut is screaming. Don't let someone convince you that respect is negotiable. You are allowed to walk away from a person who treats loyalty like an optional extra. Leaving wasn't easy, but neither was living beside someone who lied every time he smiled.